So today we're going to perform 4 short experiments so we can practice observation, inferences, and variables. And then in a few class periods we're going to talk about collecting data, making graphs, and drawing conclusions. Okay, in experiment number 1, we are going to fill up two 400 milliliter beakers. So the beaker are the exact same size. We're going to fill them with 300 milliliters of water. Now, one of the water is club soda water. This means that it has carbonation or bubbles inside. So we're going to add 300 milliliters of this. Whoa, see it's shaking everywhere? It's like a pop. Okay, we're going to add 300 milliliters of this to the first beaker. And then we are going to add 300 milliliters of regular water to the other beaker. And now I am going to put 3 little pieces of raisins inside each beaker, and we're going to see what happens. So 1, 2, 3. Oh, look at that. 1, 2, 3. So first I want you to practice taking observations and inferences. Oh, look at that. And then second, I want you to think about the variables. Okay, now, later we will then try and write a procedure for this lab, and then also maybe record some data, and then maybe also write a conclusion. But for now, let's start with making some observations and inferences, and then thinking about the variables for this experiment. Okay, so this was experiment number 1. Okay, for experiment number 2, I have 2 little canisters here. Now I'm going to start by filling these canisters, which are the same type. I'm going to fill them both so they're about halfway filled with water. So I'm going to fill them about halfway with water. I'm going to fill them both the same canister. Now, in one of these canisters, I have a little medicine called Alka-Seltzer. So in the first canister, I'm going to put half a tablet. Let me show you. So, Alka-Seltzer medicine. People sometimes take this when they have an upset stomach. Try and focus it. There we go. So sometimes people take this when they have an upset stomach or a headache. So I'm going to put half of a tablet. So this is what a full tablet would look like. So I'm going to put a half of it in the first canister, shake it, and see how long it takes for this canister to pop. Let's count. Whoa. Okay, now in the second canister, I'm going to put a quarter of a tablet. So instead of a half as much, a quarter of a tablet. And I'm going to shake it, and then I'm going to see how long it takes for this one to pop. Whoa. Okay, so this was experiment number 2. Let's start by writing down some observations and inferences. Then let's think about the variables for this experiment. And then later, again, we are going to write a procedure for this experiment. We are going to collect some data and write the data down for this experiment. And then we're going to practice writing a conclusion. So this was experiment number 2. Okay. For this third experiment, I'm going to take a little container here, and I'm going to put a piece of wet filter paper. So this piece of paper is wet. Okay, I'm going to put the wet paper on this side, and I'm going to put a dry piece of paper on this side. Now I want you to think how much I like you guys, because I went outside in the dirt this morning and I found some worms. And here is a worm. Oh, and I'm going to put this little guy in the middle, and we're going to try and look at which side this little guy goes to. Looks like he's feeling around in there. So what I did was stop the video and then took a picture to see which side. And what ended up happening was that maybe the wet side was too close to the lid, so he actually went to the side and went underneath the paper. So he wanted to go underneath something, so he went underneath the paper on the dry side. Okay, for experiment 4 now, I'm going to perform a similar experiment, except this time, inside of one side of this container, I'm going to put some dirt now. So I'm going to put some dirt in one side, some soil, and I am then going to spray that dirt with some water, so it's some wet soil. And then I'm going to leave the other side empty again. Or you know what, I'll put a dry piece of paper. So this side has wet soil and this side is empty. And now I'm going to get that same worm and I'm going to put him right in the middle there, and let's see where he goes. And while this is happening, I want you to think again, what are some observations and inferences we could make? What are the variables? And then later we'll start working on what is a procedure, what is the data we could collect, and then what is a conclusion we could write. So we'll just wait for 2 minutes and see if this worm moves anywhere now. Okay, I'm actually going to pause this and I'm going to take a picture in 10 minutes to see where the worm went. Maybe that'll work a little better if we give it more time. Again, I didn't want us to watch that for 10 minutes, so I took a picture of where the worm ended up. And that concludes our 4 experiments.